The wind howled through the small huts of the village, making the thin walls shake. Rain clouds gathered over the sky, and thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside a small mud house near the edge of the village, Mama Lady sat on the floor, staring at her daughter, Kayamika, who was humming softly to herself. The little girl was 6 years old, with bright eyes that saw nothing and a smile that could melt any heart. But the world around them had no kindness left. The neighbors whispered every day. "That woman is cursed," they said. "She gave birth to a blind child. Maybe she angered the gods." Some even crossed the road when they saw Mama Lady passing, as if her presence brought bad luck. Mama Lady tried to ignore them, but each word cut her like a knife. She worked in the fields, fetching firewood and selling vegetables, yet she barely made enough to buy food. There were days when she went hungry so her daughter could eat. Still, it was never enough. That evening, as the sky darkened, she sat beside Kayamika, who was playing with a small wooden doll. "Mama," the girl said, smiling, "today I heard the birds singing near the river. They sounded happy." Mama Lady nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, my child, birds are always happy. Will we eat tonight?" Kayamika asked softly. Mama Lady looked away. "Soon, my daughter. Soon." She knew it was a lie. There was no food left in the house. The little bag of maize was empty and she had no money to buy more. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but her heart hurt even more. When darkness fell, she sat outside and watched the rain start to pour. The sound of it reminded her of her dead husband. He had died 2 years ago in a farm accident, leaving her alone to care for a blind child. Since then, everything had gone wrong. That night, something inside her broke. She whispered to herself, Maybe she will suffer less if I let her go. Maybe someone will find her and care for her better than I can." Her heart fought her mind. She loved her daughter more than life itself. But love had turned into pain, deep, endless pain that she could no longer carry. She waited until the rain softened to a drizzle. Kayamika was already asleep, curled up in a small mat near the corner. Mama Lady stood up quietly, took her shawl and wrapped her daughter gently. The child stirred. "Mama? Where are we going?" Mama Lady forced a smile she did not feel. "Just a walk, my love. Go back to sleep." Outside the night was cold. The path to the forest was muddy, but she walked on, holding her daughter close. Each step felt heavier than the last. The frogs croaked and the crickets sang, but to her, the forest sounded like a place of judgment. When they reached the big Irako tree, the tallest in the forest, the rain stopped. The air was quiet, almost peaceful. She set Kayamika down on the ground. "Mama, where are we?" the girl asked, rubbing her eyes. "We are near the river," Mama Lady whispered. "Just rest here for a while." Kayamika smiled. "I can hear the trees talking." Mama Lady's lips trembled. She knelt beside her child and touched her face. "You are a gift, my daughter. Never forget that." Kayamika tilted her head. "Mama, why are you crying?" She wiped her tears quickly. "It's nothing, my child. I just love you very much." The little girl reached out and touched her mother's face with small hands. "Don't be sad, Mama. I can feel your tears." That was when Mama Lady broke completely. She turned her face away and bit her lips so she wouldn't scream. The pain in her chest was unbearable. She wanted to run, to take her child back home, to forget this terrible plan. But the thought of hunger, shame, and endless suffering kept her frozen. Finally, she bent down, kissed Kayamika's forehead, and whispered, "Forgive me, my little one." Then, before she could change her mind, she stood up and walked away quickly, her heart pounding. "Mama?" Kayamika's small voice called. "Mama, where are you going?" "The forest is dark." Mama Lady's steps faltered, but she didn't turn around. Her tears mixed with the rain as she whispered, "God, please take care of her. Please forgive me." The child kept calling. "Mama, I'm scared. Mama, come back." But the forest swallowed her cries. Mama Lady ran, her feet sinking into the mud, her breath coming in gasps. When she reached the village edge, she fell to her knees and sobbed. Her hands trembled and her shawl was soaked with rain. She pressed her palms against her chest as if trying to stop her heart from breaking. All night, she sat by her empty fire, shaking and crying. The sound of Kayamika's voice haunted her ears. Every time the wind blew, she thought she heard her child calling again. "Mama, come back." When morning came, she went to the market, trying to act normal. People greeted her, but she couldn't reply. Her eyes were swollen from crying. One old woman looked at her closely and asked, "Where is your child today?" Mama Lady forced a small smile. "She's with a friend," she lied. The woman nodded and walked away. Mama Lady's knees felt weak. Days passed. She tried to work, to forget, but she couldn't sleep. Each night she saw her daughter in her dreams, standing by the iroko tree, her small hands reaching out, calling her name. Sometimes she woke up screaming. She thought of going back to the forest, but fear stopped her. What if she found her daughter's body? What if she was truly gone? The guilt grew heavier every day, pressing on her like a mountain. One evening she sat outside and stared at the sunset. The sky was orange and red, just like the day her husband died. She whispered to herself, maybe she was found, maybe she's safe. But deep down she knew she didn't believe it. Years later people said the forest was blessed. Hunters sometimes heard a girl singing there, a voice sweet and clear like the wind. Some said it was a spirit. Others said it was a child who had been raised by the gods. Whenever Mama Lady heard those stories, she would turn her face away and cry silently. No one knew her secret, the terrible truth she carried alone. She had left her heart in that forest under the iroko tree. And every time the rain fell, she felt it, the weight of that night, the echo of her daughter's voice calling out through the dark. The forest was dark and wet. Rainwater dripped from the tall trees, and the cold night air wrapped around the little girl sitting under the big iroko tree. Kayamika shivered as she hugged her knees. She called for her mother again and again, but only the frogs and crickets answered. Her small hands searched the ground, feeling the rough roots and wet leaves. "Mama," she whispered, her voice weak. "Please don't leave me." The night stretched on. She was too young to understand why her mother had gone. She only knew that she was alone. Her stomach ached with hunger and her lips were dry. She cried until her voice broke, then curled up on the muddy ground and fell asleep. When dawn came, the sunlight touched her face. The forest began to wake, birds singing, monkeys chattering, and insects buzzing. Kayamika woke up slowly. Her throat hurt and her clothes were soaked from the rain. She could hear the sound of footsteps, soft but steady. It was Baba Kalechi, an old herbalist who came to the forest every morning to collect herbs. His hair was white and his beard was long. He walked with a stick and carried a woven basket filled with leaves and roots. When he heard the faint sound of a child's breath, he stopped and looked around. "Who is there?" he called gently. Kayamika lifted her head. "Please, help me," she whispered. The old man moved closer and saw a small girl sitting under the iroko tree, her eyes closed but her face calm. He knelt beside her. "Child, what are you doing here?" "My mama. She left," Kayamika said softly. Baba Kalechi's heart sank. He looked around but saw no one else. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "What is your name, little one?" "Kayamika," she said. "I can't see. My mama said we were near the river. But then she was gone." The old man's eyes filled with pity. He lifted her carefully into his arms. "Don't worry, my child. You are safe now." He carried her through the forest to his small hut at the edge of the next village. It was a quiet place surrounded by tall trees, with baskets of herbs hanging from the roof. Inside, he laid her on a mat and gave her warm water to drink. For the first time since the night before, Kayamika felt safe. Baba Kalechi cooked her yam porridge and watched as she ate slowly. When she finished, she looked toward the sound of his voice. "Thank you, sir." "You may call me Baba," he said with a kind smile. "I live alone. You may stay here as long as you need." From that day, Baba Kalechi became her guardian. He taught her everything he knew, how to recognize plants by their smell, how to grind herbs, and how to listen to the forest. Kayamika could not see, but her other senses grew sharp. She could tell the difference between mint and basil just by touching their leaves. She could hear the sound of a lizard crawling on the wall. "Your ears and nose are your eyes now," Baba Kalechi told her one day. "If you listen carefully, the world will speak to you." And she did. When the wind blew through the forest, she could tell which trees it touched. When the river flowed, she could hear its strength. She learned to walk confidently by counting her steps and feeling the ground with her stick. Soon she could move around the hut and the nearby paths as if she could see. The villagers who came to Baba Kalechi for medicine were amazed. They would watch the blind girl mix herbs, tie leaves, and pour potions with perfect accuracy. One woman whispered, "That girl must have magic in her. How can she work without eyes?" Another said, "Maybe the gods gave her another kind of sight." Baba Kalechi only smiled. "She has no magic," he said. "She has peace. She listens to the world and the world answers." As years passed, Kayamika grew into a calm and graceful young girl. She laughed often, helped Baba Kalechi in his garden, and sang while she worked. Her voice was soft but carried far, filling the forest with warmth. Sometimes she sat outside under the iroko tree near Baba Kalechi's hut, feeling the wind on her face. Though she never spoke of her mother, she often whispered into the air, "Mama, I hope you're happy." Baba Kalechi heard her once and sighed deeply. "My child," he said gently, "do you hate her for leaving you?" Kayamika shook her head. "No, Baba. I think she was sad and afraid. Maybe she thought I would die. But I didn't. Maybe she needed me to live another way." The old man smiled softly. "You have a strong heart, Kayamika. Most people would carry anger, but you carry peace." Kayamika turned her face toward the sound of birds. "Peace is lighter than hate," she said. From then on, she became known across nearby villages as the girl who sees without eyes. People came from far away to ask her for help, not only for herbs but for advice. She could tell when someone was lying just by the sound of their breath. She could sense when someone's heart was heavy even before they spoke. One day, a mother brought her sick baby to Baba Kalechi's hut. The baby had been crying for days. Kayamika touched the baby's forehead gently and smiled. "Boil some pawpaw leaves with honey," she said. "The baby will be fine." 3 days later, the baby was healthy again. The mother returned with tears in her eyes and said, "May the gods bless you, Kayamika. You truly see without eyes." Kayamika only smiled. "It is not me," she said softly. "It is the light inside us that sees." Even Baba Kalechi was amazed at how wise she had become. He often told her, "One day people will remember you as the girl who brought light to darkness." But Kayamika never thought of herself as special. She still helped Baba Kalechi fetch water, cook food and tend to the herbs. She listened to the sound of children playing in the distance and felt happiness in her heart. Still, sometimes at night she dreamed of her mother, a face she could not see, a voice she barely remembered. In her dream, her mother was always crying. Kayamika would reach out to touch her, but the woman would fade away like mist. When she woke, she whispered, "I forgive you, Mama. Wherever you are, I forgive you." The forest that once took everything from her had become her home. The same trees that had witnessed her tears now stood as her silent protectors. The same winds that once chilled her now sang softly as she walked. Baba Kalechi grew old and weak, but Kayamika cared for him until his last days. Before he died, he took her hand and said, "You are light, my daughter. Never let the world turn you dark." After he passed, Kayamika buried him near the iroko tree, the same kind of tree where she had been abandoned years ago. She sat there for a long time listening to the forest breathe. Though her heart was sad, she smiled and whispered, "Thank you, Baba. You gave me life when I had none." The villagers built her a small hut beside the forest, where she continued to heal the sick and guide the lost. Whenever people asked how she could do so much without seeing, she always replied with a gentle laugh, "Because my heart still remembers light." And so, the blind girl who had once been left to die grew into a woman whose spirit shone brighter than any flame. Many years passed, and the village that once whispered about Mama Lady had grown quiet. The seasons came and went, but life was not kind to her. Her small farm, where she once grew cassava and maize, had turned dry. The soil cracked under the sun, and the rains no longer came when they should. Her husband, who had promised to stay beside her, left when hunger became too hard to bear. Mama Lady grew thinner each month. Her hands, once strong from farming, now trembled when she worked. Her back ached, and her eyes were tired from tears she could no longer count. At night, she sat outside her hut, staring into the darkness. The wind would blow through the trees and she would close her eyes, remembering another forest, the one where she had left her child so many years ago. Every night, she saw her daughter in her dreams. A small girl, blind and crying, calling her name. "Mama, don't go. Mama, please." Each time Mama Lady woke up sweating and shaking. Her chest felt heavy, and her heart was full of pain. "What kind of mother was I?" she whispered into the dark. "I left my child to die." The villagers no longer mocked her, but they also no longer cared. People avoided her because misfortune followed her like a shadow. Some said she was cursed. Others said the gods were punishing her for what she had done. One morning, while sitting outside her hut, she overheard 2 women walking by. They were talking about a woman in another town, a healer who helped the sick and the poor. "They say she is blind," one woman said. "But her hands can cure what medicine cannot." "Yes," the other replied. "They call her the woman who sees with her heart. She even helps those who cannot pay her. I heard she is blessed by the spirits." Mama Lady lifted her head. Her heart began to beat faster. "A blind woman?" she whispered. The memory of her daughter flashed before her eyes, little Kayamika with her small hands and empty gaze. She listened as the women walked away, their voices fading down the road. That night she could not sleep. She sat by the small fire, her face lit by the red glow of burning wood. Could it be her? She thought. No, it cannot be. My child must be gone by now. But a soft voice in her heart whispered otherwise. The next morning she made her decision. She packed her few things, a small wrapper, a calabash of water and some dry bread. Her legs were weak, but she told herself she would walk no matter how far. She needed to find that healer. The road was long and dusty. The sun beat down hard and the stones cut her feet. But she kept walking, leaning on a stick for support. When she felt faint, she rested under a tree. When she was thirsty, she drank from the stream she found. As she walked, her mind went back to the past. She remembered the night she left her daughter, the heavy rain, the sound of the wind, the cries of the little girl calling after her. "Forgive me," she whispered as she walked. "I did not know what I was doing. I was young and afraid. I thought you would be better without me. I thought I was cursed." Tears ran down her face, mixing with dust and sweat. Days passed before she finally reached the next town. Her feet were swollen and her body ached all over. She asked the people she met where she could find the blind healer. They pointed her toward a small hut at the edge of the village. "You will find her there," a woman told her. "She is kind, but many come to her. You may have to wait." Mama Lady nodded and slowly made her way to the hut. The place was surrounded by green plants, herbs of all kinds. A gentle smell of medicine and flowers filled the air. Outside, a few people sat waiting, each one hoping to see the healer. Mama Lady joined them and sat quietly on the ground. Her heart beat fast as she listened to the sounds, the murmur of people, the soft wind through the trees, the gentle voice of someone inside. Then she heard it clearly. It was a woman's voice, calm, warm, and kind. "Bring the child in," the woman said. "Don't be afraid. Sit down. He will be fine." The sound made Mama Lady's chest tighten. There was something familiar about that voice, though it had grown older and deeper. It carried peace but also strength. She waited for hours. The sun moved across the sky and people came and went. Finally, it was her turn. When she entered the small hut, she saw a young woman sitting on a mat. Her eyes were closed, her face calm, and her hands busy mixing herbs in a bowl. "Good day, Mama," the woman said softly. "Please sit. Tell me your pain." Mama Lady's lips trembled. She sat down slowly, staring at the woman before her. Though she could not see, the woman turned her face toward her as if she could feel her presence. "I am sick," Mama Lady said in a shaky voice. "My body is weak. My heart, it is full of guilt." The woman reached out her hand. "Let me feel your pulse," she said. Her fingers were gentle as they touched Mama Lady's wrist. Then slowly she touched her face, her cheeks, her eyes, her forehead. There was a long silence. Then the woman whispered, "You smell like rain and palm oil. Like the forest after a storm." Mama Lady's eyes widened. Her heart skipped a beat. "Child," she breathed, her voice shaking. "What did you say?" The woman's voice trembled slightly. "I know this scent," she said. "It is the scent of my mother." Tears filled Mama Lady's eyes. She covered her mouth, unable to speak. Then, with shaking hands, she reached forward and held the young woman's face. "My daughter," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's me. It's your mother." The room fell silent except for their sobs. "I left you," Mama Lady cried. "I was foolish and afraid. I thought I could not care for you. I thought the world would be kinder than I was. Please forgive me." The young woman, Kayamika, held her mother's trembling hands. Her eyes, though blind, filled with tears that fell slowly down her cheeks. "I died that night, Mama," she said softly. "But someone found me. He taught me how to live again." Mama Lady wept harder, pressing her forehead against her daughter's hands. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Kayamika smiled faintly. "Forgiveness is not earned, Mama. It is given." For a long time they held each other in silence. Outside, the wind blew through the trees, carrying the sound of birds singing. The same forest that had once separated them now seemed to whisper softly, "Two hearts were whole again." When Mama Lady finally spoke, her voice was weak but calm. "The gods gave you back to me," she said. "I came here looking for healing, but I found my child." Kayamika touched her mother's hand and smiled. "Maybe both of us will heal together." And for the first time in many years, Mama Lady felt peace settle in her heart. The pain of her past was still there, but now it was covered by something greater: forgiveness and the quiet love of a daughter who had never stopped hoping. The small hut was quiet except for the faint crackle of firewood. The smell of herbs filled the air, sweet and bitter at the same time. Mama Lady knelt on the cold floor, her body shaking from the long journey and the weight of her guilt. Her eyes were swollen from tears. She could barely speak as she held out her trembling hands. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking, "help me. I'm sick. My soul is sick." The young blind woman sitting before her turned her head slightly, listening. Her eyes, though clouded, seemed to look through the silence. She slowly rose to her feet and moved closer, her bare feet quiet on the clay floor. "You have traveled far," the woman said softly. "Your heart is heavy. I can feel it." Mama Lady lowered her head. "Yes, too heavy," she murmured. The woman came nearer and placed her hand gently on Mama Lady's shoulder. Then her fingers moved up, touching her face, her cheeks, her forehead, slowly, carefully, as if searching for something deep beneath the skin. For a long time she said nothing. Then she whispered almost to herself, "You smell like rain, and palm oil, like my mother." The words hit Mama Lady like thunder. Her breath caught in her throat. Her hands began to tremble violently, and tears spilled down her face. "My child," she gasped, her voice trembling. "It's me, it's your mother." The young woman froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She stood very still, as though time had stopped. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched Mama Lady's face again, her hands shaking. I can't see you," she whispered. "But I know this touch, this voice." "It's me, Kayamika," Mama Lady cried, her voice breaking. "I left you in the forest. I thought I was cursed. I thought you were better off without me. I came back, but you were gone. I thought you were dead." Kayamika stepped back, her body trembling. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a voice that carried both pain and calm, she said, "I did die that night, Mama. But God raised me again, through the kindness of a stranger." Tears streamed down both their faces. Mama Lady crawled forward on her knees and held her daughter's hands tightly. "I was a foolish woman," she cried. "I let fear guide me instead of love. Every night I saw your face. Every day I felt your voice calling from the forest. I have carried that sound in my heart for years." Kayamika knelt beside her, still holding her mother's hands. "And I carried your voice in mine," she said softly. "Even when I thought you were gone forever, I prayed for you." They stayed like that for a long time, mother and daughter, holding each other in tears and silence. The fire flickered, casting soft light on their faces. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees as if the forest itself was listening. After a while, Mama Lady spoke again. "When I left you, I thought I was doing what was best. I had nothing, no food, no strength, no hope. I thought the world would take better care of you than I could. But the truth is, I left my heart behind that night." Kayamika nodded slowly. "The world was cruel at first. I cried until I could not breathe. But a kind man found me, Baba Kalechi. He took me in, taught me how to live without sight. He told me the world still had light even for those who could not see." Mama Lady wiped her tears. "You must have hated me." Kayamika shook her head. "I was angry for a long time, yes. But hate never healed anything. Baba said forgiveness is like water, it cleans what the fire has burned. So I forgave you long before I found you." Mama Lady covered her face with her hands and sobbed. "You are too good, my child. I don't deserve your forgiveness." Kayamika reached out and pulled her mother into her arms. "A mother's love does not die even when it is lost," she said gently. "You made a mistake, but love has brought us together again." The two women stayed like that until the night grew deep. The moonlight shone through the cracks in the roof, touching their faces with silver light. Later, Kayamika made her mother a bed in the corner of the hut. She brought warm soup and said softly, "Eat, Mama. Rest your body." Mama Lady obeyed quietly. Each spoonful of food made her cry again, not from pain but from the warmth she felt inside. She had never thought she would hear her daughter's voice again, much less feel her hands or share a meal. After she finished eating, she looked at her daughter and said, "You have grown into a woman I could never be. Strong, kind, and wise." Kayamika smiled faintly. "Pain teaches us many things, Mama. It can destroy or build. Baba taught me to let it build me." For a moment they sat in silence, listening to the sound of the night, the distant cries of owls, the soft rustle of the leaves. Then Mama Lady spoke again. "The day I left you, I thought the forest had swallowed you. I spent years waiting for the gods to punish me. I lost everything, my husband, my land, my peace. But now I know that losing those things was the only way I could find my way back to you." Kayamika reached across the fire and took her hand. "Maybe it was not punishment, Mama. Maybe it was the path to mercy." Mama Lady smiled weakly through her tears. You sound like Baba Kalechi, she said. Kayamika's eyes softened. He was my father in every way but blood. When he died I felt alone again. But now that you are here I feel whole. The fire burned low, filling the hut with soft light. Mama Lady lay down, her eyes still fixed on her daughter. You have forgiven me, she whispered. But how can I forgive myself? By loving again, Kayamika said quietly. By staying. By letting peace in. Mama Lady nodded slowly, her eyes heavy with tears. Then I will stay if you'll have me. You are my mother, Kayamika said with a smile. I have always had you even in the dark. That night, as Mama Lady drifted to sleep, she felt something she had not felt in years, peace. The weight in her chest began to lift. The sound of her daughter humming softly filled the room, wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Outside, the moon rose high, lighting the forest path that had once been the scene of pain but was now the road to forgiveness. For the first time in a long time, both mother and daughter slept soundly. And though one could not see and the other could not forget, they had both found the same light, the light of love that had survived through darkness, distance and time. Days turned into weeks, and Mama Lady stayed in her daughter's hut. Her body had grown weak from the long journey and the years of struggle, but her heart began to heal slowly in the warmth of her daughter's care. Kayamika looked after her like a mother would a child, gently, patiently, and with deep love. Every morning, Kayamika woke early to prepare porridge, humming softly as she cooked. She would help her mother sit by the doorway to feel the morning sun on her face. The light feels warm, Mama Lady would whisper, and Kayamika would smile and say, even without sight I can feel it too. Their small hut became a place of peace. People still came from far villages to see the blind healer, but now they found her sitting beside her mother, feeding her, combing her hair, or telling her stories from the past. At night, when the fire burned low, Kayamika sang softly. Her voice filled the little space like a prayer. Sometimes Mama Lady would listen quietly, her eyes wet with tears. Other times she would join in, her weak voice trembling but full of love. Why do you still sing for me after what I did? She asked one night. Because Mama, Kayamika said, love does not stop when someone leaves. It waits. Mama Lady covered her face and wept. I do not deserve your kindness, she said. I left you to die. I failed you as a mother. Kayamika took her hands and placed them on her own face. Mama, she said softly, you gave me life. Then Baba Kalechi gave me a second one. If I carry hate in my heart, I would lose both. Mama Lady sobbed quietly, holding her daughter close. You are the light I never saw, she whispered. Every day Kayamika showed her what forgiveness looked like, not through words but through care. She washed her mother's feet, prepared her food and stayed by her side. When her mother coughed or shivered, she wrapped her in a blanket and said, Rest, Mama. I am here. As the days passed, Mama Lady grew weaker. Her steps became slow, her breath shorter. Yet she began to smile more often. The burden that had weighed on her for years was fading. The guilt that had haunted her dreams was finally lifting. Sometimes she would look toward Kayamika's gentle face and whisper, You are an angel, my child. I was blind, not you. And Kayamika would laugh softly and reply, No, Mama. I only learned to see with my heart. One quiet morning, when the sky was painted gold by the rising sun, Kayamika sat beside her mother's mat, holding her hand. The sound of birds drifted through the window. Mama Lady looked weak but peaceful. My child, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I do not have much time left. I have prayed for forgiveness every night. But tell me once more, do you truly forgive me? Kayamika smiled gently. Yes, Mama. I forgave you long ago. Pain taught me how to love even when I could not see. If I had not known pain, I would not have known how strong love can be. Mama Lady's lips trembled. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I see now, she whispered slowly, I was the blind one all along. Her eyes closed and she smiled, a small, peaceful smile that stayed even after her breath faded. Kayamika sat still, holding her mother's hand long after her heart stopped beating. She did not cry at first, she only listened, to the sound of the wind, the rustle of the leaves and the quiet heartbeat of the earth. When the sun rose high, she prepared a small mat and carried her mother's body gently to the forest. She walked carefully along the path she had once walked as a child, the same path where her mother had left her many years ago. The forest was calm that day. Birds sang softly in the trees and sunlight danced on the leaves. When Kayamika reached the big Irako tree, she stopped. She knelt down and touched its wide roots with her hands. This is where it began, she said softly. This is where you left me and where I was found again." She dug the earth slowly with her hands. It took time, but she did not hurry. She placed her mother's body gently into the ground and covered it with soil. Then she sat beside the grave, resting her head against the tree. For a long time she said nothing. Then she whispered, "You are home now, Mama. You gave me life and now I give you peace." The wind blew gently through the forest, brushing against her face like a mother's hand. It felt like her mother was still there, whispering through the leaves. From that day on, Kayamika returned to the Irako tree every evening. She would sit there, her hands resting on the roots, listening to the wind and the sounds of the forest. Sometimes she brought flowers, sometimes food, but mostly she brought her silence and her peace. People often saw her walking into the forest at sunset and asked her why. She would smile and say, "I am going to visit my mother. We talk in the language of the wind." Her fame as a healer grew, but she remained humble. She never charged the poor and she never refused anyone in need. Some said the spirits blessed her because she forgave what no one else could. Others said her kindness came from the pain she turned into love. But to Kayamika it was simple. "Forgiveness," she often said, "is the song that heals both the heart and the wound." Years later, children who played near the forest would tell stories about a blind woman who sat beneath a great tree, smiling as if she could hear something beautiful. They said, when the wind blew through the leaves, it sounded like two voices, a mother and a daughter, laughing softly together. And in that laughter there was no more pain, no more regret, only the quiet truth of love that had conquered everything.